What's up, true believers? Welcome to Greg's Comic Book Club, issue number 22. I'm Greg, and this is the boss baby,
What's
Barrett
up?
Courtney.
How you guys doing?
I'm good.
Yeah?
How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm a little tired. It's a crazy day.
You've had a lot to do here. Huh?
Yeah,
Kevin out at the new studio, knocking down walls, keeping all this stuff. You got to keep the shows running afloat here.
Yeah, but it's been a fun day, and I'm excited to finally be able to sit down and talk about Batman: The Last Night on Earth today.
We are going to talk about Batman: The Last Night on Earth here because, of course, that was your required reading. If you didn't know, this is Greg's Comic Book Club. You on Patreon give us $1. You get an exclusive Patreon show. It's this for now. This is the final Greg's Comic Book Club. Because Greg Way took over for that, which already has episode 1 of that up, and then that's going on. While we're here, let's just get into the goodbyes, all right? Jericho wrote in to patreon.com/kindafunny, just like you can. It says, "What's up, Greg and Barrett? For one last time, I wanted to post here and say this. Thank you for this show. Greg, you know how Kevin is a smell amplifier? I do, Jericho. You're a comic book amplifier to me. I was always interested in comics with the Comic Book Club on the Kinda Funny morning show back then, though." Yeah, okay. I'm sorry. I see where you're going. Back then, you gave me a reason not only to be interested, but really invested in comics. I freaking love them now. Again, thank you for that. You may have noticed that I haven't been active here that much, or at all. I stopped reading comics for a while now due to a death in the family, pun intended, because of cancer. It was hard, and it's still hard for me to believe that this man that we loved is gone. We love so much is not on this earth anymore. He was a superhero to me. We all know superheroes have their flaws too, and we'll never forget those either, but his heart was always in the right place. But I at least wanted to be here one last time to say goodbye to this show. It was a great read. Smiley emoji. Until it comes back again, hopefully. Much love from Berlin, as always. Jericho, you were always one of the first people. You were, for the longest time until you dropped off, and again, our sympathies again. You dropped off. You were always the first person responding to every thread with what you've been reading, what you've been going, what your reviews are. We love you. Remember, everybody. I'm going to go through a few more goodbyes here. But even though Greg's Comic Book Club being sunsetted here, Greg Way, pretty much the same thing. Yeah. Because you can talk to me about comics there. It's the idea that 2019, of course, Greg's Comic Book Club kept on trucking, and it was great. But we started Greg's Comic Book Club on the morning show, and it was like, let's read one thing. And then when it became its own show on Patreon, which was awesome and amazing, obviously for 22 months now, it was rad. But what I found at the end, and I've talked about this obviously on the streams and stuff where we announce stuff, what we found at the end there, and I'm being generous with the end. I would say the last 8 months, 9 months, whatever it would have been, right? Is that I've been too busy to read comics myself. Like I'm reading some, but I'm not reading like when we started the club, and video games were slow, and I could get into a whole bunch of stuff and play stuff. Now I'm playing stuff so much.
Whereas Greg Way kind of opens the door for not only just comics, but anything that you're doing.
100%.
Work, video games, TV, anything that you're doing. Now we just get to have that conversation with you.
And it's the same way of what worked with the Comic Book Club, in which so many of you wrote in to talk about, that you get to have conversations with each other in the comments. Of course, it's the same way on Greg Way, where when you see that thread go up and you want to ask questions, you want to see that what you want to have the conversation there. When I talk about an issue there, I say next time I'm going to be reading this, talk in the comments of that Greg Way about what's going on. Submit your questions based on that. But I digress. I don't want to get in the way of you saying goodbye to a show you loved. Arvel wrote in and said, "Hi, Greg and Barrett. I'm sad about this being the last comic book club. For me, I don't have many friends that are into comic books. Even worse, they think reading them is just a waste of time. Thanks to the OG comic book show and the old morning show and the Patreon exclusive comic show, I had the feeling of being part of a big community and where I could also, from time to time, add something to discussions. It also led me to open up my interest for comics outside of the usual DC or Marvel superhero genres with standout comic books like We Stand on Guard, Paper Girls, The Boys, Murder Falcon, and the still frightening, well, he says frightening, I wasn't wrong, but fright-inducing Uzumaki. Remember that one with the spirals?
Oh, yeah.
I still get nightmares from that. I'm hoping that there will be some place left for comic book content in the upcoming Greg Ways or other KF shows. Thank you for 2 years of great comic book content. Thank you again for all your support on this. You guys have made this so much fun. But again, even here in the last few months, I felt like I'm not doing my homework. And I have legitimately not done the required reading a few times and owned up to that, right? But I think moving it to where I'm just going to talk about a couple books I read, if I read something that month, it makes more sense, right? Riley O'Neill writes in and says, "Hey, best friends, this is my favorite content from Kinda Funny, and I'm very sad to see it go. I've no one in my life to bond over comics with, and this was the one way I could keep talking about comics with like-minded people. So, thanks for being awesome, Greg, and everyone else.
Thank you.
Since this show has a special place in my heart, I will proudly keep the playlist of every episode on my private YouTube or whenever I decide to reread some awesome comics. I would also like to thank everyone in the comments for helping me with inquiries and just for being awesome. Last and definitely not least, I have I have to thank Greg, Kevin, Barrett, and every guest for providing me with entertainment and insight about one of my favorite mediums. Now I have to go cry about everything I love ending this BoJack Horseman, The Good Place, and to a lesser extent Arrow. To a much lesser extent Arrow, but I understand what you're saying. I appreciate
to a major extent, BoJack Horseman.
Yeah, you got to do it on Screencast. I read your tweets about it. It's very in depth.
I don't know if that conversation is meant for Screencast.
Well, we have cool friends. Come on, we have cool friends and talk about
maybe.
This.
But yeah, the ending of BoJack Horseman absolutely wrecks me, and then I'm not yet in a place to be hurt again by The Good Place. So
sure,
I totally understand.
Yeah, I understand that. So, everybody's freaking out about that ending.
Yeah, well, because like the last episode I watched, it felt like what should have been the season finale, so I'm scared of what the last 2 episodes are going to do. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Again, what I would encourage you all to do, though, is if you feel like you're losing this conduit for comics, the first step, I think, would be, and I want you to use us the same way you use the Comic Book Club posts. Use the Greg Way posts. Go over there, talk comics there. Again, I can still call out what I'm reading, what I think you should read once or twice. And an issue is when I keep calling the Greg Ways, but an episode of the Greg Ways. And then beyond that, remember, you can have the avenue of, on Patreon, you can do patron posts. You can do your own, you can click over to the thread, right, and see. That's still a thing, right? Actually, as I'm saying it, I'm like, you know what? I haven't checked on that in a long time on Patreon.
I'm not like the best Patreon user, so I can't comment on that.
So hold on, I'm gonna go. And I'm on Kind of Funny Games, but I assure you, it counts either way. So yeah, you go to posts. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So at the top of Kind of Funny Game or Kind of Funny Anything, there's a community tab you can click on where you can make posts and talk to one another. For sure, use Greg Way. Continue your conversations there each and every month. If that's not doing it for you, I would encourage you to then, on the community tab, go there every Wednesday and make a post about, hey, what comics are we reading today?
Yeah, like what just dropped and stuff like that. Yeah,
your pull list, really if you will. And if even that's not good enough for you, use the Kind of Funny subreddit. Put it there.
Boom.
They might get flagged. This isn't Kind of Funny content. But you can say, no, Greg said we should make. Hey, here's what the best friends are reading every Wednesday. Right. Only one of them, though. Then the rest that can come up, they get flagged. I'm not going to have the whole thing in date with goddamn comic books. Ladies and gentlemen, this is, like I said, the Comic Book Club, the last issue. Thank you so much for supporting it. Thanks for being a supporter of Kind of Funny. Thank you for all the support in January. You blew all our fundraising goals and milestones out of the water. Housekeeping for you, our friend Jason Inman, of course, he used to be on DC All Access. He then wrote the Super Soldiers book that I did stuff for. He's doing a second volume of his all ages book, Jupiter, Jet, and the Forgotten Radio. You can go look at it and kickstart it on jupiterjetcomic.com. The synopsis is, when the mysterious Black Flyer arrives in orbit and threatens her world, Jupiter Jet finds out that her hero skills may not be up to the task. Being a hero there's a typo here. Being a hero takes/requires more than just a jetpack. Does Jupiter Jet have the courage to save her entire planet? We'll soon find out in the second volume of the Ringo Award-nominated series by writers Jason Inman and Ashley Victoria Robinson and artist Ben Matsuya.
I can't believe it won a Ringo Star Award.
I know, right? Yeah. Ringo Starr. Imagine
Huge
if that was how it was.
Fan.
Ringo Starr's like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm a big enough name. I'm making my own award show.
It honestly sounds like
my
something
comics,
weird and random.
Music and movies, everything I've been going on, all this stuff. Barrett, I put the goodbyes in place of what's the best thing you read this month, right? I still have my pull list in there. Have you been keeping up with comics outside of the Batman stuff?
I mean, I'm terrible at keeping up with comics. I feel like the biggest I was into comics was when I was growing up and the Ultimate run was happening, and I was keeping up with almost all of the Ultimate Marvel stuff, and then Ultimatum happened, and that really started some trust issues with me and comic book events.
Welcome to comic books.
Yeah, and so I'm really bad at keeping up with like everything, like what's new and weird and exciting, or even just like major stuff. Like I have my specific things that I like to check out every once in a while or go back to. So I've been really bad for the last few months, I would say. Like the Last Night on Earth is the one where I've made sure every time it comes out to pick it up from the comic book store down below.
Yeah.
And actually like get into it. But yeah, comics, it is sadly like one of those mediums where, because I'm literally into everything, TV, movies, video games, it is kind of on the lower tier.
Yeah.
And they were really like the big thing for me when there wasn't a lot of TV going on. Where like the only show I really cared about was Breaking Bad at one point. And so like
so there was more time.
Yeah, so there's more time to actually like dive deep into to things. So yeah, I've been really bad about it lately.
Yeah, I hear you. Like I said, I think I've been so stretched so thin by all the game stuff going on lately in our world that it's been, definitely in terms of like entertainment mediums, right? I think I've always said comics are like probably number 2. Like it's video games and then comics. But even that said, it's such a rare occasion that I sit down and catch up on so much stuff. Like I caught up on all the Batman stuff to finish out Tom's run. Or no, that's not right. Tom. Wait.
Ooh.
No, Tom Taylor.
Yeah. King?
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I was the last names were throwing me. Finish out Tom King's run in the City of Bane stuff, which again I was just like,
yeah,
I liked it so much in the hey, here's the Catwoman thing. They're gonna get married. They didn't get married. Why didn't they get married? What's going on? Here's Batman heartbroken, and then they tied that all into this is Bane's master plan, and it went on way too long of this reveal of what was going on to finally get to the end to finally be done with it. But it's done now.
Yeah,
put it away, move it on. This week, Justice League 40 dropped. And I have not kept up on Justice League at all, but I wanted mainly because I'm such a Superman nut to jump in and see if they had already started pulling in Bendis's reveal of Clark Kent is Superman. And this issue doesn't in any way touch on that I can tell because they're not like referencing it. It's just a Justice League story. And I was actually caught off guard by how much I dug it. It is just them working as a team. And I know that sounds silly, but as somebody who fell in love with, and I always think this is so funny to talk about now, but growing up, remember, for me, DC refused to put the 7 together. The Justice League was never Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, Flash. It was always this weird
separation of groups and like weird,
it's Batman running it, and it's Booster Gold, and it's Blue Beetle. Like, who the fuck are any of these people? And so it was such a big deal when Grant Morrison came in and did JLA and united everybody. That since then, I think they've done a different job of expanding the Justice League, putting so many different faces in there. To jump into this one, number 40, sight unseen, no idea what the main angles have been. There's no part 3 or whatever. It's just, hey, we're jumping in and they're on a mission and what's going on. And, Superman and Batman moving the teams around, making them act funny or not act funny, go investigate things, Flash, do a 3-mile search, all this jazz.
Right.
It's actually a really good read. I'm excited to see more of that.
Interesting.
But in terms of my pull list, the thing I put on it, of course, that I've said is Superman 19. Again, this is the sequel. This is the one after the big reveal of Clark saying he is Superman, telling the world that and what that would look like. And I've been telling people online about it, right, that even though I haven't had as much time to get to comics, these issues from Bendis, this in action, right, are like destination viewing. When it's that Wednesday where they drop, I have to read it that day. I want to know immediately what's happening.
That's what Bendis does so well, of creating kind of a world of like only slight changes, but like because of those slight changes, it like makes the context for things so much more interesting. And a Bendis story is very addicting in that way, where it's just like, fuck, I need to know what is happening, what's going on, how are these characters. Maybe it's not like a big issue or anything, but there's still little things that you want to see, like how characters are dealing with situations.
And that's the thing about it, where it's still the tale of two Bendises, the tale of two Supermans, where this one opens in the aftermath of Clark revealing his identity. It's him and Lois in Perry's office, right? And Jimmy's there taking photos and stuff. And that's exactly what I want out of this moment. I want to see that stuff. So I love everything that happens at the planet, right? Like he's already revealed it to Perry, which I thought was the most touching scene in 18. That's the one that choked me up for the first time. There's just this awesome stuff there of Clark there without his glasses, but he's not Superman, and everybody talking to him, right? And like Perry fires him because legal's like, we hired him under false precedent. We didn't know that this would be a risk, yada, yada, yada. So he fires him and then immediately hires him back under whatever name it wants to be. Now, but we have to have it on paper of what it is. For me, and this is such a Greg thing, like that was the one point that I thought was a fumble of like, there needs to be a conversation about journalistic integrity of Clark writing stories about Superman. That is him. Like that's not, you can't let that slide.
Like, did they rehire him to cover different angles or anything like that?
They rehired him to still be a journalist and be an award-winning journalist and all this stuff. And like, again, I understand that it's kind of one of those forget everything you knew moments, right? Of like, we didn't know what we were in for. Now we know what we're in for. You're part of the team or whatever. And there's this great moment in there where, he's talking about him missing deadlines, but he's got super speed and he can't stand for that. And he's like, well, that was all legitimately happening. He's like, but the spelling errors I tossed in out of marital solidarity so that Lois didn't look bad. And Lois is like, no, you didn't. And he's like, yes, I did. She's like, aw. It's like this cute moment of that. And then he goes out into the planet's, bullpen and like talks to all them. And it's this really cool stuff. That's awesome. The second half is this continuation of the United Federation of Planets, right? Of like basically the UN of planets out there, and Superman's our representative, and he goes back there, and Mongol shows up, and it's like it just turns into a fight, and I'm like, I don't give a shit about it. I don't want to see him punch stuff. It's the Earth stuff that's the most interesting shit, but it didn't change anything for me. It's still destination reading.
That's awesome.
Stephen Allen wrote into patreon.com/kindafunny. He picked this issue up too and says, hello, Greg and Barrett. What I've been reading this month, Superman number 19. The follow-up issue to the reveal continued to be great with some really good moments. The meeting with Perry about not having Superman as a source anymore to when he walked out of the bullpen with his coworkers. Really curious to see where it goes. And that was another thing too where Perry's like, well, you can't be a source anymore. And Lois is like, what about to me? And it's funny stuff there.
Interesting.
Brandon Jackson Shorts put in Superman number 15, which I think he means number 19. And maybe it's actually me fucking it up, but whatever. While I'm not very excited to see Superman get outed again, parentheses, since it just happened a few years ago, I'm liking the story so far. I'm glad there will be repercussions for Clark, parentheses, even though they were almost immediately wiped away. And I like seeing how the DCU is handling it. The scene of the Daily Planet newsroom was particularly nice to read. Yeah. That was one of some people's big, not knock, I'd say, but complaints about this choice was that it had already happened with New 52 Superman, where Lois had revealed his powers. That's when he used the solar flare. That's when he was depowered and running around jeans and a T-shirt.
Right.
I think the circumstances of both reveals, the point in Superman's life he's at in both those different timelines, different timelines now and stories, like it's apples and oranges to me, where this is such a tried and true
context for it. He's in like a different place that both of these characters are in. That even though it does feel like a weird retread because it's an event that happened a few years ago, that doesn't mean it's not as emotionally poignant as the first time.
And I think it's more because I mean the reason they went back to making it. And I know that there's a whole bunch of shenanigans with the timelines here, but the reason this is, post-crisis Superman, pre-New 52 is because nobody really liked New 52 Superman. Right. Because he was just this alien who fucked Wonder Woman hot. But, he had no Kents. He wasn't into Lois, and him didn't have a thing, and it was just, it never really resonated
that
with
was
people.
one of the few areas of the New 52 that I feel like they really dropped the ball on.
Right. And so to have this one be, hey, it's what you know and love about Superman. Let's see how that situation plays. Like, his identity being revealed now is a much bigger deal because of Lois, because of Jonathan, because of the Kents, because of the planet, right? Whereas I feel like before when it happened and then he just went on the road, I was like, what the fuck? This is dumb. But I digress. Most of our time was spent on our required reading, Batman, Last Night on Earth by Scott Snyder, and then Greg Capullo, as always. Barrett, you were the one who demanded we read this.
I came in drunk the last episode. I was like, Greg, let's do this next month. Not knowing that this was going to be the last episode. Not knowing that Greg was starting. Because we're all so busy. Like, I don't know all the plans. So I was just like, let's do Last Night on Earth. And you're like, yeah, sure. Okay.
Yeah, of course. Why not? Yeah, let's do it. What do you think of this book? I don't even know if you love it.
We got book 1 through 3 here because...
That's the full run, DC Black Label.
And I really enjoyed it. It's one of those things where there are moments that reminds me of, like, weird moments in Endgame where it's like, the initial shock of some reveals feels like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. And then when you kind of sit down and think about it for a little bit, you're like, oh, no, I do think this is like, some of it is like kind of dumb, get hype moments. Let's have an excuse for like certain characters to get what they want in the end. But I think it was like a really kind of cool way to slightly in a non-canon, because Black Label's all about like they're almost like what ifs,
dark stories. Yeah.
And like
we can curse, we can show a dick, and then we'll take back the dick.
Yeah, and this was like one of those things where it felt like the wrap up. It felt like the deserved wrap up to Batman New 52's storyline more so than like Metal. And like Metal was a frustrating one because, and it's definitely on me and like the amount of time that I have to read comics.
Sure.
Where it was like, okay, Snyder and Capullo are working together again. Like, let's like see where this continuation of this Batman would go. And then it just felt like too cosmic almost of like what was going on with all the like the dark universes and like all this shit, and you had to like
dark multiverse
and you gotta like keep up with and there's
a million tie-ins
a million tie-ins, and that was kind of the frustrating thing. Whereas here I think they tell a story that just feels like if you only stuck with the New 52 Batman run, you understand, like, you know what you need to know going into it, and it gives such an interesting almost commentary on like a couple of different things. Like, yeah, there's the surface level of different generations of Batman. Like in the New 52 run, Bruce Wayne is creating this machine to make sure that every generation of the human race has a Batman, because every generation needs a Batman. He knows he can't be that forever. And so I thought it was like a really cool way to... Shit, I forget like where I was going with this. Fuck.
You're talking about the different commentaries that were on it.
Yeah. So like... There was,
and I have a question too, just to stop you, even if not even to give you a chance to catch your breath.
Yeah.
Is that I don't remember? Was he making this? I don't remember how the Snyder run ends anymore in New 52.
So Snyder run ends. I mean, it ends on a beautiful issue where it ties itself back to the first issue of Court of Owls, where it's like the Gotham is write-in thing in the comics. So that's like the last issue, but the last like major arc in the New 52 run was when Gordon took over as Batman, and then James Gordon.
Right. That's when Snyder stopped?
No. So like during that like whole thing where he's like Robo Bunny Batman.
Yeah. I read all that.
Yeah. And so Bruce comes back, and the way he's able to come back is because he forgot all of his memories after the Endgame incident with Joker.
Yeah.
Forgot all of his memories and then forced himself, like made Alfred put him into that machine to give him back all of his memories, so he could become Batman again. So he could be.
I do remember that.
Bruce
I didn't realize. I guess I forgot the part that was a
like that's how he came back. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that was the Robo Bunny stuff was like kind of weird, but I think
it was super weird, but it was cool weird because it was like, all right, let's do something different.
Yeah, and like let's have Gordon as Batman and see like how he grapples with that and stuff like that. And I thought like the premise and start of it was weird, and then I think they tied it together really well. Of like there is kind of an idea in this run, like at the end of that run, and in this 3 issues especially, of that like Bruce Wayne needs to be Batman. And I really enjoyed that. And so go back to the different types of commentary here of like there always needs to be a Batman who can really only be Bruce Wayne, or at least that's what Bruce believes, because he's made this machine to give the new Batman Bruce's memories so they can be Batman. But there's also like this weird like thing of passing on the torch at the end. Like I don't know when if we dive into spoilers.
Oh sure, go
at
for
all.
I mean, again, this is required reading. You should have read it.
So yeah. So like the end where it's revealed that what's Bruce going on? Omega? Like when it's revealed that, because there's talks about like Omega like being someone close to Bruce, and like you don't really know who it is.
Yeah.
It might have been another clone of Bruce, but it turns out it's the original Bruce Wayne. And there's a really touching, like, it's fucked up because this Batman, New 52 Batman, was my Batman. That was
it's great. I love that Batman.
It's fucking fantastic. And it was one of those things where back in the BZG days of Barrett Courtney, I actually wrote up a piece about why this Batman was my Batman, because there was a new, fresh, like Batman finally felt modern to me, and finally felt like he belonged in this kind of like era that we live in. And it kind of hurt when it's revealed that Bruce Wayne turns into this villain, but they're like the new Bruce Wayne.
I mean, this is just a story.
No, I know, but like I like to take it as canon because it hurt at first, but then it was one of those things where Clone Bruce is talking about like, hey, if you really believed that like all of this was fucked and you needed to like really take over the entire world and stuff, like why would you bring me back? Why would you have all of these people in place to do this thing? You made the point of like everything happened because of you. Why would you give the chance of hope at all? And it's because he like Clone Bruce thinks that original Bruce secretly believes that there still is a chance for there to be the right Batman, the right kind of Batman for this generation, which Bruce can no longer be.
Yeah.
And I really like that because there's kind of like this commentary on like generation stuff, especially in today's political climate and like how we're taking care of the planet and whatnot, of like, are people trying to push the younger like generation to become the heroes so we can fix things going forward? I think it's also like a slight thing. Scott Snyder has always said like, this is my final Batman run. This is my final Batman run. But like this really felt like he was saying goodbye, especially in the last issue, or or in the last like sort of segment when Joker Robot is doing kind of this commentary where he says, "I laughed and turned to him to tell him I had a new poem in mind, something profound, using minimal dirty words about him, about everything, maybe a moderate amount of dirty words." But he was already looking ahead at the rocket door opening and the boy in the alley. And right then I knew that I'd already said everything I needed to say. And that felt like a moment of like Scott Snyder actually like kind of maybe not letting go of Batman as a whole, but letting go of this iteration of Batman. And like, he's got a bright new future, and like we don't need to, like, we can walk away from it at this point. And I felt like it was almost maybe a commentary on like passing the baton of a comic book writer, like of Batman, the Batman baton of like, all right, like this is my story and I've said all I've needed to say about Batman, like let me pass it on kind of thing. And like I didn't get that the first read around. I was like skimming through it earlier today, and like I definitely reread like those last few moments, and I was like, holy shit, this really feels like Snyder and Capullo, especially together, like saying goodbye to at least this iteration of Batman. Who knows if they come back together one day for something else. But
Sure.
like I really loved it, especially with it hurt with the Bruce Wayne reveal at the end, because I was like, how do you explain that? Like, he was so good. He was a great Batman, but it was one of those things where they explain like when the people chose evil. Where the people chose, like, Superman dies, Lex wins the argument.
Yeah.
And even after that, Batman's like, no, we should still trust them. That these are the people that I'm here to protect. And before that happened, before the Superman dying thing, his last case was the boy in the alleyway, and where the boy, like the dead kid, shoots Batman, and it's revealed that was the child of Joe Chill. And I forget why, but I forget exactly what happened, but apparently Bruce's parents were like the
they
cause.
weren't good guys. Yeah,
like they weren't good people, and like Batman learning that,
and it wasn't just a random hit. It was a hit.
It was a hit, and it was one of those things where Bruce realized like everything he's tried to stood for of random, like crime and violence against like the people of the innocent, realizes that like narrative isn't true, and then the next thing he deals with is that the people he has tried to protect throughout his entire career as Batman, immediately when he opens the door to what do they call the building for the Justice League?
Hall of Justice.
Yeah, when he opens the door to the Hall of Justice, and the first thing they do is tear him down and like beat the shit out of him and like try to kill him and stuff.
But
and
he's
so,
the
like,
one who opened the door, right?
I know,
When Diana's like, why would you trust me? Like, you're the one who opened the door.
It hurts.
None of us would open the door.
I know, and that's the thing that hurts, is that like Batman is like, he will always believe in people, and that's why I think it's a really fun conversation they have at the end where clone Bruce is like, hey, I don't believe you believe that this world is fucked. You might not be the right Batman to get us back to where we need to be.
Yeah.
And I really, really fucking loved it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I went on a whole.
No, I mean,
Barrett
this is your book, and I mean, you are the Batman guy. No, I'm stoked you're there, and I'm stoked you. I'm glad it resonates for you.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that it didn't resonate for me as much as it was too fantastical. You know what I mean? Like, especially for my Batman books, like I want it very in a specific way, and I always thought, I wish in a perfect world that the Snyder run would have ended with the end of Endgame, where it was him and the Joker there, and the cave collapses together. Down them, and it's like, again, in my perfect world of how comics actually happen, that's it. We're done.
Yep.
You put that done, and now a new writer comes in and does whatever they want. They have a whole new thing to go with, and you don't have to worry about it, and you're just off to the races, ready to go. And so, like, when Gordon got brought on Batman, I thought it was an interesting twist. It was like, whatever, cool. And then bringing Bruce back, you're like, okay, I get it, and all this stuff. But still, it was just like, especially for their run, I felt like that was such a great
and like I think, trying to think back to it, I thought like for a lot of us, or for my friend Ricky and I, who weren't like into like Reddits and like on like all of these internet boards and shit talking about the run, we honestly thought Endgame was the end of it. It was literally called Endgame. And then I think it was like soon after that run, or maybe near the end of the last few issues of Endgame, they had already announced that they're like, oh, we're doing like one more arc and stuff. It was like, oh, all right.
Interesting. Yeah, just to get it to rebirth or whatever. Right?
But yeah, I think they, like I said earlier, they pulled it back in a cool way and tied it all together really well. Yeah, I think this is one of the things where I think this, compared to the stuff I've read recently, especially with metal, like I think this is a nice in-between of like what I like Batman to be with the crazy 0 year type of shit and like the really out there fantastical stuff that metal did. And I thought this was a cool in-between because it really did feel like, to me, this felt most like the coolest scene in Batman v Superman, where Superman is bad and like they're in the post-apocalyptic world and Batman's got his like army and stuff, and then like the fucking what is it, like the
parademons?
Yeah, like they come in and shit. Like this felt like Mad Max Batman for a while, and I thought that was really, really cool, especially like the way that they were able to play with things, and like they don't even have to explain a lot. But in book 2 of at the very beginning, there's a time storm, and you get this really haunting like imagery of all of the flashes in this like weird tornado and
stuck in the Speed Force.
Yeah, they're stuck in the Speed Force, and like because that everything around Batman and Joker is like being sped up. Like Batman's riding on a horse, and you see the horse kind of like dissolve and shit. Like I think it made for some like really cool imagery.
100%. I'm not taking away from that at all. Like don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the ride. I enjoyed the what is going on, and then like you're saying, the questions and I think hypotheticals. You know, I don't think you need to get into like this was your Batman.
No, to me, like because I think I really, really love the ending of this. Like to me, like I feel like this is a cool. I'm not going to compare it to like. The closest comparison I can give it is El Camino for Breaking Bad.
Okay.
Where it's like, if you want the New 52 to end at Endgame or at like the Gordon arc or stuff, like that's totally cool. And then like, here's a cool little like epilogue for you if you want it. You know? So,
yeah. And that was the thing of legitimately not knowing what would be next, and knowing they could do whatever they want, and knowing they had their own devices to serve, and like for them to. For Batman, Bruce, whatever you want to say, to pick up the torch and try to go back. He sees the original Bruce trying to like catch Superman, right? Because he knows like hope is so important. And then for the book to end with him being able to go do that, the Joker's head in this globe or whatever, and being like, "Can you trust him?" And then making him a Robin at the end and stuff.
Oh
and, like,
my
all
God,
that stuff. It's like
so good.
It's a great one of what you're talking about of Mad Max, where it is that feeling of. The rules don't apply anymore. You know what I mean? You don't know what you're going to get when you turn the page. You don't know who's going to show up or who's still around or what it means. And like that was the other thing too of like what's real, what's fake. Like even the opening, right, where they're trying to convince him he's in Arkham,
which is
and I knew nothing about the book. You've been you gave me issue 1 a long time ago, and I was waiting for all to come out, and so I was very much not sure where we were going, and so I was like, holy shit, are we here
like
the whole time?
This whole sequence right here, like I don't think it's ever been done in a comic book before, but there's been this whole talk for years on the internet of like, wouldn't it be so cool if really and what's going on, like conspiracy theory type of shit that like Bruce Wayne is just in an insane asylum and Joker is like his primary doctor, and like all of these villains he sees as bad people are people just trying to reinstitutionalize him. And I thought that was so cool that like that's been like shit that people like write about for years, and I thought it was so cool that they were able to like play around with that like idea for a little bit. When
he goes in, he gets the penny and the dinosaur. I was like, that's cool.
Oh my God, that was like a heart. Like again, where like I picked this up and I was like, okay, I know he's got to find Joker at one point, so I don't know if this is truly real, but that was another heartbreaking moment. I was like, fuck, if this is real, like. Oh no, this is really heartbreaking. Just like the little penny and a play dinosaur.
Barrett, let's see what everybody else thought. Of course, you on the Greg's Comic Book Club are a main part of it. You write in patreon.com/kindafunny, giving us your thoughts. Kayla starts. Damn it, Batman. You go to sleep for a moment and look what happens. The whole damn world is on fire. This was a really quick read for the amount of pages that were in the first book. I do love a good Batman mystery, even if it suddenly ends up on an apocalyptic Earth. Snyder writes Batman/Bruce just the way I like it. Sorry, Tom. Pairing it with Capullo's art. I now realized I've missed this duo. I really hope this book sticks the landing since she writes as she updates, right? Since Black Label has been lacking in excellent books. Not as late since the last year, luckily. This is the first book that has the potential to be classic. Book 2 really dives into the dystopian lands that Batman and Jar Joker drudge through. From Speed Force storms, animal men fighting unknown soldiers, to plains of solitude, death and mystery seem to follow the duo everywhere. It's interesting how they dealt with Superman. The kryptonite impaling page was shocking to say the least.
I know.
There's some magical/mystical elements thrown in this book that remind me so much of Metal, but it's definitely easier to comprehend.
Yep.
I liked how the knock-knock motif moves throughout the book.
Yep.
Book 3 concludes in an interesting way with Omega Batman versus Clone Batman. Omega Batman was a cool character because to me, this was just another version of what would happen to Batman if this and this happened to him,
Right.
and what would become, and who he would, and what would he become? Parentheses, see the Batman who laughs, Flashpoint Batman, etc. He saw his own son tortured and killed in front of him, while the same was happening to him, because he thought he was doing good by seeing good in others by holding the door. Some parts felt self-indulgent, but overall, I feel like this book was, on a whole, great to read. Andy writes in, says, really like this reading, but I feel like the Last Warrior on a Dead Earth story is a trope we're going to have to get for every single comic book character, Thor, Hulk, Wolverine, etc., to the point of redundancy. Some are better than others. They tend to just blend together. Am I slightly jaded, or do you agree?
I feel like that's a fair comparison.
I see, that was one of my things of not a turnoff, but like why I don't think I was ever super stoked, right? It's like even from the thing in the title, I thought that's where we were going, and that's where we were going.
Yeah.
So it was like, oh, okay.
I think for me, it was a little more exciting because like I haven't read a lot of those like Last Warrior on Earth kind of things. So this was like, oh, finally, like I get to like experience a story like that for my superhero.
It's from your favorite folks making your favorite character.
Yeah,
like
exactly,
that's a different ball of wax altogether.
Really quick before we move on, one other thing I wanted to shout out is that I love like Joker is narrating kind of the entire thing, right? Where he's like monologuing and stuff like that. I love that it felt like in the beginning of issue 1, it was hard to tell who it was really. Yeah. And I love it. Like to me, I was like, oh, this is Gordon. This is Gordon talking because Gordon is the one who always narrates. And I love that it was like kind of a slow reveal of like, no, we're going on this adventure with Joker. And I absolutely adored that.
100% too, yeah. Matthew Clem says, hey, Greg and Barrett. Long-time listener and fan since the Beyond days, but my first time writing into the show. I started getting into comics during the New 52 and was first introduced to Snyder and Capullo during their incredible run on Batman at the start of the Death of the Family storyline. Great storyline. Snyder instantly became my favorite writer and Capullo one of my favorite artists. I went back to read their acclaimed Court of Owls story and have followed their work ever since. My question is this. As The Last Night on Earth is essentially the end of their run for Batman, do you have any favorite moments or issues from their main stories in comics that they did together for the character? Mine would be issue number 40 from New 52 Batman, which is the culmination of the Endgame storyline between Bruce and Joker. Looking back, Snyder has been a huge inspiration for me to start writing my own comics, and I definitely owe my love of comics to my all-time favorite creative team. Gonna miss this show, but I'm excited to see where Kind of Funny and Kind of Funny's games go in 2020 and beyond. For you, as the big fan, what stands out? Because for me, it is Death of the Family and Endgame, where it is I won't forget like that scene of Joker and Batman laying there together.
I think that's like out of panels, I would say that's like one of the most iconic throughout the series. I mean, like Court of Owls, like
of course, incredible.
That whole run is great. I think my favorite issue, or like kind of, I guess, 2 issues, because I think they reveal it at the end of the issue and then they really dive deep into it in the next one, is the idea of the Talon being Bruce Wayne's brother and like the kind of weird mystery about it of like, there's a lot of evidence pointing both ways and there's like kind of like lies in some of his story, but there's truth in some of it. And to me, it led to one of those great Batman mysteries of, is he really Bruce Wayne's brother? We'll never know. It's leaning more towards no, but like there's that great kind of feeling you like get that I hadn't really felt since Hush of like, is this Tommy? Like, what's going on? Holy fuck! Did he just die? Like, what just happened? Like the ramping up of that.
Court of Owls can't be overstated how good that is.
It's one of like to this day I would say like. Because you can take it just by itself. You don't need to like read up to like what started New 52 again. You don't need to read even after that, really. As a standalone story, I would put it in the top 5 Batman stories of comics.
It's so good, like you're saying, as an entry point, but then it's also, and I know this sounds probably played out, but stick with me. It is that rare thing of Batman being on his heels, and he this is so unexpected because he's
not in power anymore.
It's not the villains taking over the city. It's not someone throwing him out of the cave. It's the fact that the Gotham he knows so well is a lie.
Yep.
That is not what Gotham is.
Gotham has never been his.
Exactly.
And that's like, that was the coolest fucking reveal and scare. Like, that was the most scared I ever was for Batman when he, honestly, if we're talking about like best, I think the best issue of the entire run is when he's going through the maze. where
Yep.
he's
and he
going
comes out all like his
insane.
eyes out of oh my god, yeah.
Where he's going crazy in the Talon maze, where he's kind of drugged up, and they're trying to feed him in this water, and he's like, that's probably drugged, but he gets so thirsty that he does end up drinking it, and it's one of those things where because it was a new run, I have expected it to be like, like, are they gonna kill him, and then like we move on with the rest of the series with like we go back to like Dick being Batman or something like that. Like, it was so crazy because this flips the entire like Batman kind of ethos on its head. It was just, Court of Owls is fucking fantastic. I think the one that I think gets the least amount of love outside of the Gordon one is Zero Year, and I really love Zero Year, and I think that it like has a lot of like similar ties to Year One of how everybody has come together. It's another Batman origin story and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I think it's one of the most unique Batman origin stories, just of like how the beginning of his career plays out. How we've seen before of like him and his like strange relationship with Alfred and how he's dealing with things. But I think the way they develop that relationship, I think, is the best in how they do it. And just like really cool things where it's like, I love Riddler, and Riddler is never like really perceived as like really a villain who has his shit together. So of course, again, I love Hush, and I really think it's cool when like Riddler is the one who gets the one up on Batman, and we're like the entire time when he's focusing on the Red Hood, Riddler's kind of playing the back game and like thinking about the long term of like, how do I come up on top? And that's what the second half of that entire arc is. Like, the first half is Red Hood, and I like that they give a more definitive statement of, yes, Joker was Red Hood, but we don't really know who Red Hood was. I like how they built that up, and then fucking Riddler being the man of the hour for that second half, I thought was a really, really cool decision. And it was because of that comic where I had the dream casting a few years ago of who did they cast as Riddler for this new Robert Pattinson movie?
The rumor was that kid, right? He's not a kid anymore.
He's from Little Miss Sunshine.
Yeah, he's from the Oil movie. You drank my milkshake.
Drank my milkshake.
Hey,
The Girl Next Door. He's also in that.
with Daniel Day-Lewis or whatever. Like, I abandoned my boy, and he's the fucking dude in it. Who's playing the
No
Riddler?
Country for Old Men or something like that?
Oof, jeez, man, we are struggling. Paul Dano.
It was because of 0 Year where I was like, fuck, Paul Dano would like be great as the Riddler, and now we're getting him as the Riddler. Called that. Yeah, I really love 0 Year, and I would love to see that adapted into a video game.
There will
or a
be
movie.
blood.
That's
the movie we're talking about.
Okay. He is in The Girl Next Door, I think.
No.
He's
the Girl Next Door?
Yeah, he's the friend with the really big dick.
That does sound familiar.
And then he's like really young in that movie though. And so, yeah, I really love 0 Year. I think like some of my favorite imagery, honestly, is from 0 Year of just like how the dystopian kind of Gotham where it's like been taken over for a month, and like you've got like, it's a very Last of Us like kind of vibe of like nature taking over the city, but it's also like got these really cool neon like colors and stuff that they play around with that I really love. But yeah, New 52 is cool.
Also love Death of the Family.
Death of the Family, awesome.
Another iconic thing. Again, because it was just such a big deal for the Joker to be back. But when he has all the Bat family members around the table, and it looks like he cut their faces off. And even for me reading it, I'm like, did he really do this? Like, are they about to do this? How could they do this? And Batman takes it off Damien. Damien's like, how bad is it, father? And it's not real. Yeah, it's like, oh my God, so cool. Katie wrote in. She says, the mystery in episode 1 hooked me, and issues 2 and 3 definitely paid off. I love the intrigue and the darkness of this comic, and actually read it a second time once I knew how it ended, just so I could enjoy the hints throughout again. I think this is the perfect example of why it's important to have some stories outside of a wider continuity. It was refreshing to see them free to do a different take without worrying about permanently changing characters in a way the next writer couldn't come back from. Frank S., frequent contributor. Frank wrote in on his question, was like, can I please, if it's the final episode, can you acknowledge that I write in every episode? Last Night on Earth. I've only read the first issue, but I'll give it my thoughts, what I think so far. The first issue wasn't really doing it for me. I love Scott and Greg's Batman run, but this just felt a little too out there with the Batman story. I'm not against crazy stories, but Batman has always been more of a grounded character for me.
Yep.
I felt the stuff at the start was quite boring as well. You're crazy. We all know Batman's not crazy, and I've seen the cover, so why drag it out so long? I didn't hate it, though, and I will be picking up the trade when it comes out. I give it 3. I know you hate these quote scores, but I'm going to keep doing them one last time out of 5. I'm so happy I never did that shit again, Frank. Piece of trash.
Fuck you, Frank.
Congratulations on writing in your first episode. Arvel writes in, frequent contributor. When the Joker movie came out recently, the main pitch was, if Batman is someone who is just one step away from becoming a bad guy on a bad day, does Joker need only one good day in his life so that he does not become the evil Joker that he eventually becomes? This book is having a similar premise. Batman is losing his entire will to fight for humanity and becomes even more evil than the bad guys he's been fighting before by becoming Omega. In the end, he still wants to save humanity by stripping away the humanity from humanity. Yeah, English is a great language to do word plays with, via the anti-life equation. On the other hand, the bodiless Futurama Jokerhead has basically become a good guy after Batman became a madman, who even becomes a sort of Robin by the end of book 3. Overall, I liked the book once it clicked for me. It's an interesting way to end Scott Snyder's Batman run for now. So far, I've only read Court of Owls and Batman Metal, but I like this sense of mystery and detective plots. I hope his paths will cross again with, I hope his paths will cross with Arkham once again soon. Angry Barrett voice. Just announce the friggin' Arkham game, you cowards!
Do it! You want to know how long it's been, Greg?
I do want to know how long it's been. You want me to read more while you do that?
Yeah.
Griffin wrote in, said, it's an interesting Batman book when I find Bruce Wayne to be the least interesting character and the most interesting character. I love the idea of the Omega Batman, and when I realized that that's what this book was doing, I was enthralled. All in all, it was an amazing book. But what I loved most was seeing the side characters and how they were surviving this universe. And the payoff with Joker Robin was hilariously brilliant.
It was so good. Of like he kept asking, like, can I be Robin now? Like, can I be like, oh, like is the horse? Where Batman is like, I'd make the horse Robin before I'd make you Robin.
Yeah.
And then the horse dies like 2 panels later. He's like, that might be the shortest Robin.
Yeah, that was great. It was really fun.
And like the Joker Robin robot thing was the thing that reminded me most of Avengers Endgame, of like seeing Professor Hulk, where it's just like, this is weird and I can't tell if I love it or hate it yet. Let me just like kind of write it out and see how it like closes out. And they did sell me on it like once it wrapped up, because again, this is a new generation, a new like kind of like these characters kind of got to grow in ways that we didn't expect them to. And I do really like the switch of Batman turning into the bad guy and Joker getting like kind of this redemption moment. And to go back to what I said earlier about Batman no longer believing in humanity because of the whole like his parents thing, Joker then reveals to clone Bruce about, hey, my last like case that I made for you fucked you up, and because Joker had faked it all. Joker had like totally went through everything to give Bruce this case that would totally destroy him. Yeah. And that's like what Joker did. And there's not really like in a moment of like an apology or anything like that, but there's still like this moment where he's like, I understood what Batman needed, and it seemed like he didn't understand what humanity needed anymore. And it's one of those things where like, I was Batman's right hand man. What that is upstairs, because he like Omega leaves so like Bruce can like be strapped into the machine. He's like, well, that up there isn't Batman anymore. You're fucking Batman. And it's just like one of those things where like, oh my God.
It's awesome.
I love it, because Joker's giving the speech, and out of anybody, he understands Batman the most. Also, really quick, Joker like to do like the holy like cow Batman kind of thing, and it wraps up with holy shit Batman. Yes, they did it.
Final one on this one comes from Brandon Jackson Shorts, who said, I did it. I haven't done one in 6 months or more, but I did this one mainly because I'd read it as it was coming out. Lol. For me, Last Night on Earth started off great, but lost steam in every subsequent issue. I really liked the first issue and how to introduce the new world, but I felt the following issue was a lot of flash, no pun intended, with little substance, and the last issue was way too much too fast. The Omega reveal was barely addressed, and suddenly a bunch of characters are introduced, like Dick's kid, without addressing them at all. I was so confused that I ended up rereading the end of issue 2 to see if I misremembered something. Maybe it's because I read this as it was coming out, parentheses, and the last issue came out the same day as Doomsday Clock, but I really didn't like this overall. For me personally, and again, I love this is out of continuity for the most part. I love that they're doing their own thing. A girl pops up. She says Dick's dad. I get it. I don't need it. Like I've seen it in Kingdom Come. I've seen it somewhere else. I don't need this explanation. I was more of like when we get underground and we find the Amazons or whatever. It's like, all right, Wonder Woman and Supergirl. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Supergirl's still alive too. Like, get up there and fix this.
I was like less like upset about that, like of like the little moments, because like that's all I really needed, because that story isn't like really about them. Like, all right, yeah, like Dick has a kid now, like, all right, cool, whatever, let's move on. And they're like a tech person or whatever, and I like that we got to
expected
see
with Oracle being the mom.
Yeah, exactly. And then I always forget his name. We got a follow up to, who is Nightwing again?
That's Dick.
Or no, Batwing. No,
yeah, that's. Oh, you mean?
I always forget his name.
Yeah. Because he didn't have the name for the longest time.
I know, and then like they
finally gave him one.
They gave him a confusing one that's like an amalgamation of like a bunch of different names we've heard over the years. Wing Knight. Fuck, man.
You're not wrong.
I'm not, man.
Fuck, that's gonna kill me. And there's no easy way to search for that.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Shit.
It's.
Is it not Batwing?
No, it's Batwing. It's Luke. Luke Fox is Batwing.
Okay. Yeah, I like that we got to see like another like continuation of that. Jesus, there was like a couple other characters where again, like I didn't need like the big heavy moments of like, all right, let's have a moment with each and one of these characters.
Yeah.
Like, all right, little like side throwaway things of like just seeing these people in this kind of fucked up universe. I enjoyed. I think their struggle with issue 2, I think, is interesting. Like, yeah, there was a lot of Flash, pun intended. But I thought really what I think that issue felt like less of a Batman issue and more of like what happened with Superman and stuff like that. And that's where I really enjoyed it, because it was there. To me, issue 2 had like the most amount of substance, because it was this kind of thing about humanity giving up, like why humanity gave up hope and humanity choosing evil. And I thought that was like the most of like, holy shit, like what brought them down this road, and like what makes Lex fucking out of his mind and like know that he is in the wrong, where like he expected him to be the losing argument, where like his was a calculated speech, and Superman was the one who gave like the best speech of like all history time, and both of them like thought like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna stand here, he's gonna save me, it's gonna be fine. And it was like, holy shit, like that moment, like I really loved issue 2.
Did you find it all to be a weird though, like unbelievable thing? Like that was what I took away. I mean, I liked it, don't get me wrong, but it was like as a plot device to look back, and I was just like, the whole world's voting on this speech. That's a weird thing that we're pinning this on.
Whenever they involve the fucking big starfish that can read minds, I'm
all, what up, baby?
Yeah, dude, I hate that character, but I love him. It's one of those like
I almost bought on Etsy the Starro thing you can put on
he's like
years
DC,
ago.
He's like DC's MODOK, where he's just like, he's not a interesting or like. He's not an interesting character. He's just like a meme character at this point, at least to me. I don't know if I'm reading that wrong for Starro, but whenever they introduce him to anything, because he was the one like helping that vote or whatever, where he can read everybody's minds and like depending on like all that shit, like whatever. But I think the moment and like how I think that moment was like a very shocking, like holy shit.
It was shocking for sure. Yeah.
And like, do I think it was earned or anything? I don't know, but like I think it made for interesting conversations.
Exactly, and that's the thing is I can't sit here and be like, I don't mind not knowing who Dick's daughter is. And get, well, is that a weird thing? I get it. I understand that these are the signposts to the bigger picture. We're trying to get from point A to point T. I don't need to stop every time. And see
which isn't the best story writing, I will say. Like I do think like to give the context of the New 52 like entire run, I would say like this is kind of like on the lower tier for me. Like it's definitely, I would say like I definitely like it more than Metal. I don't know if I would put it up against like anything from the actual New 52 run, just because I think like it felt like Snyder and Capullo had like a story that they were trying to tell the entire time, whereas this is like fuck, let's have fun, who cares?
Yeah, this is a goofy thing. Not goofy, but this is a weird one-off and Black Label, and we can be dark and we can curse and do this stuff.
So,
For one final time, let's see what you should be reading. And I say one final time again. Put it in Greg way. What you're reading, what other people should read. We'll keep going that way. Kayla writes in and says she just finished Doomsday Clock number 12. I suppose it's quite fitting that the final issue lines up with the final episode of Watchmen. Doomsday Clock was a book discussed quite a bit among the various guests in the club, with varying degrees of, wow, this is amazing, to nothing's happening. I've probably been the biggest supporter of the book, not because it was supposedly a Watchmen DC book, but that this would have been the rebirth of characters that have essentially disappeared from the DC universe. Fortunately, it was both of those things. But also, this was a celebration of the most important comic book character existing, Superman. Everything begins and ends with him. And perhaps this is a love letter to the Justice Society of America as well. Dr. Manhattan moves Alan Scott's lantern inches away from him, which then alters history, and he doesn't become the Green Lantern, which then leads to Clark Kent becoming a hero later in the timeline. The JSA is a huge part of this universe. The chain reaction of events like Ma and Pa Kent's death, never inspiring the Legion of Superheroes. The fact that even Superman's hope ultimately inspires Dr. Manhattan in the world of Dr. Manhattan is telling. So I believe Doomsday Clock, taking 2 years to finish, was damaging to say the least, and ultimately it hurt the impact the story could have made for a better DC universe. But it is what it is, and like Superman says, better late than never. Jeff Johns killed it, per usual. Gary Frank and Brad Anderson really just excelled in illustrations and coloring. They truly are the best around. Also, the splash page of all the heroes charging might be one of the best splash pages I've ever seen. I legit shed a tear and stared at it for like 5 minutes, just looking at all the characters they included. Yeah, Doomsday Clock 12. I mean, you want to talk about a fucking journey this book has been to finally get here. You know what I mean? After delays and moving from a monthly to every other month to delays. Like, it did exactly what I thought it would, where I read it and I liked it, but the entire time I'm like, wait, so what was happening? And you got to put yourself back, 2 years ago when this started, of what DC Universe was. Right. And so, yeah, it would have been way more powerful to get it all out. Now that they're all out, I do want to do a reread one way through, because that is what killed it, where the first few issues were great, and then the first issue where they took it a bit slower and had a 2-month gap, you're like, wait, what? What's happening? Who is this? Why? And so
I've never read it before, so maybe I'll do a read through.
You've read Watchmen before.
Yeah. I reread Watchmen right before watching the show. Yeah. So I'm all refresh on that storyline. So
yeah, and that's the thing about it. The way they go through and retcon, what Dr. Manhattan does there to retcon stuff is interesting, is cool. Yeah. But again, I think it would have been, to her point, way more powerful if it had happened the way it was supposed to have happened.
Right.
Because I think, Bendis coming in kind of changes the game and puts it in a different way.
Yeah.
Katie writes in, she's been reading Ms. Marvel, the 2014 edition. I decided to read this on a whim based on a brief comment from Imran Khan made ages ago on Kinda Funny Games Daily about liking it. And boy, was he right. If you haven't tried this series yet, I definitely recommend it. It's a great origin story, and it's both whimsical and heartwarming. The tone reminded me a bit of Paper Girls. While it was lighter than most superhero stories I've read, it didn't feel like it was becoming too silly, concentrating on the human struggles of a 16-year-old with strict but loving Muslim parents. I think the first 2 volumes, 10 issues, are on Comixology, and it has the bonus of being a good background info on the character if, like me, you were otherwise going into Square's Avengers blind. Can't say enough good about this. Yeah, Ms. Marvel, fantastic book, especially that first run in there. And I echo everything Katie's saying here. If you haven't read Kamala Khan's story, definitely jump in, see why people adore her in Ultimate Alliance, why we're excited for the Disney Plus show, why we're excited for whatever story they're going to tell with her in Avengers.
Fuck, I forgot she's got a Disney Plus show.
Yeah, which will then make it to the cinematic universe, apparently, according to Kevin. So, yeah, that's exciting. And
Kevin Quell?
No, Kevin Feige. Come on now. Kevin Quell doesn't know anything except how to eat paint chips. He's great. Jesus. He's great. No, he's great. He was in the here earlier. I don't know if he already leave.
He left.
I mean, it's funny when they can hear it and they can come and yell at me. But what are you gonna do? Dead to me. Brandon Jackson Shorts writes in and says, Suicide Squad 1 and 2. Greg, if I don't thank you for anything else, I have to thank you for Tom Taylor. I'd already read Injustice, and I was already reading All New Wolverine when you mentioned Taylor, but I didn't really pay attention to who writers were back then, so I didn't realize how much I liked his work. Once you mentioned it, I started following and loving everything he's done, and Suicide Squad is no exception. I love the introduction of new characters, and I really, really like that Taylor is introducing people of different nationalities, sexualities, and sizes. It's diverse in the best way, and the story is spectacular. The new squad leader is interesting, and the dynamic that's created when half this squad hates the other half has already led to some great team dynamics. I haven't read it yet. I love Tom Taylor, obviously. Internet friend of mine. Adore everything he's done. And no, I haven't read it. I've actually more been thinking about, I should read all of Injustice. Because I was reading them for the longest time, right, of the incremental stuff, and I remember the first scene ending, but like there's so much now.
Yeah, there's
and he's
so
done. I think now
much,
with
man.
at least his part of it, to sit down and just go boom and read all of it.
That's like a big task.
I know.
Yeah.
But it'll go fast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing is he did such a great job with Harley in Injustice to get her now in Suicide Squad's great. Oh, look at that. Katie got in here twice, but I didn't screw it up. That was my thing. Good. Whew. Let's get some big questions in here, all right? Alex and Amanda McHale write in and say, "What's up, y'all? I'd love to hear your opinion on Identity Crisis. It was the book that brought me back into comics after quite a long hiatus. It's definitely one of my favorite books of all time, and not to mention Michael Turner's covers are beautiful. Thanks." Barrett, have you ever read Identity Crisis?
No.
Are you familiar with it?
I'm looking it up now. No.
You're going to try to fill time as you went? Identity Crisis is... how do you... the best way to describe it. It's going to sound stupid. It's a 2004 book, and it is it's a 7-issue limited series, whatever. You can get it now as a trade. Written by Brad Metzler. And it was a tone change, I want to say, for the DC universe. It grabbed headlines because it was wrestling with something super serious. I think in a lot of ways, Doomsday Clock wanted to be Identity Crisis.
Interesting.
In the way of, we're going to put out a mini-series that changes everything and it really affects the DC universe. But with the delays and all the stuff and how it all went, that went awry. And I'm going to ruin Identity Crisis here. You should read Identity Crisis. It's great. Spoiler alert. What?
Don't ruin it. I'm
You want to read it?
Yeah. Because I think I have it at home. And I just haven't read it yet.
read it by now.
I know. Fuck. You can ruin it.
No, I
It's
won't get
fine.
into super
It's
specifics.
16 years later. It's on me.
God, it is 16 fucking years later,
I know,
isn't
dude.
it?
Yeah,
Jesus
it's on me.
Christ, when you say something like that.
I know.
Well, no, if people haven't read it, there you go. Let's talk about it on the next Greg Way. Everyone should. That's your required reading for Greg Way episode 2. We're going to talk about Identity Crisis. I haven't read it in years. The idea, basically, that isn't a spoiler, is that, hold on, I want to get her name right because that's a horrible thing to say. Yeah, I would have gotten her name wrong. Sue, who is the wife of Elongated Man,
Okay.
is dead. She's been murdered, and it's this what happened here. Oh my God, somebody's figured out secret identities. What are we gonna do about it? And then everybody's kind of at risk now because everybody's got a secret identity partner. And what does that mean?
Okay.
And the reveal, and then it's the stories going back through that and what happened. And yeah,
Interesting.
you definitely should read it.
Okay.
Identity Crisis.
I think I have it at home.
Okay.
I think so.
Let me know if you don't, because I think I have it.
It's
in
either
hardcover.
Identity Crisis or Infinite Crisis.
Yep. Well, you see.
I was gifted.
DC's got a thing with crises.
Yeah,
as you
yeah.
know. Yeah. I know what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. Chris Pascal writes in. Patreon.com/kindafunny. Unrelated to the required reading, I just wanted to leave some info since this will be the last episode. I recently got into comics about 2 years ago, and I've been diving deep into Marvel Unlimited. I have had no idea where to start, but I found 2 very helpful websites to guide me through events and reading orders. First is comicbookreadingorders.com, which has great reading order lists in general. Second was comicbookherald.com, which is one guy, Dave, building very helpful fast-track guides to help get you through whatever era you desire. Hopefully, this helps anyone intimidated by diving into comics. I'll miss the show. Thank you, Greg, for being a nerd. Love you guys. Don't worry. We're still going to be nerds. And those are great recommendations for where to go.
Awesome. That's awesome.
Kayla writes in. Says, after 21 episodes and hundreds of recommendations of graphic novels and comics, we've arrived at the final issue of Greg's Comic Book Club. I don't think I need to elaborate on how much I enjoyed participating every month. It really helped me with expressing my opinions and emotions on comics. I'm not much of a writer, and writing thoughts on the internet can be a dangerous game, but I felt like this was a safe place to talk about the books we loved, and sometimes the books we didn't love. So I thank you for that, hoping maybe one day you'll be able to bring it back. So my question for Greg, and everyone else reading this Patreon thread, for the 22 books that were recommended by various guests, which ones have stuck with you and which was your favorite? And if you didn't read all the books, which issue of Comic Book Club was your favorite? Here's the list of books and the corresponding issue, all right? Here we go. Number 1, Kingdom Come with Tim. Number 2, A Second Chance at Sarah with Benny the Comic Historian. Number 3, Green Lantern, Earth 1 with Anthony Carboni. Number 4, The Vision with Kevin. Number 5, Descender with Gene. Number 6, Be Prepared with Babs Tarr. Number 7, Last Man with Irene Coe. Number 8, Vagabond with Gary Whitta. Number 9, Superman vs. Muhammad Ali with James from Isotope Comics. Number 10, Uzumaki with Chris Anka. Number 11, Murder Falcon with DJ Wheat. Number 12, The Sword, Volume 1 through 4. Number 13, You Are Deadpool. No guest. We did a playthrough of that. Number 14, Black Hammer, Volume 1 and 2 with Joey McCormick. Number 15, Tokyo Ghost with Curtis Clow. Number 16, Low with Kevin. Number 17, The Boys by myself. Number 18, Paper Girls, the entire run by myself. Number 19, We Stand on Guard with Ryan from Marvel. Number 20, The Immortal Hulk, again with Chris Anka. Number 21, About Betty's Boob / Black Widow, Name of the Rose with me by myself. And now, number 22, Batman Last on Earth with Barrett. Kayla and Katie. They always throw me. I can't see their name. Kayla continues. My favorite right off the bat was The Vision. In books, I had to continue on with like Murder Falcon and Black Hammer. You can't say the books recommended on the show weren't diverse. James was my favorite of all the guests. His knowledge of comics is awesome. It inspired me to read more books out there. And his hype for Uzumaki was the best description of a book I've ever read. Haha.
Hell yeah.
For me, I'm cheating, but the favorite thing I read was the entire run of Paper Girls. I loved Paper Girls and having it all, done. Being able to read it start to finish, see all the references, keep up with who Grandfather was and where we were going.
Make all the connections.
Exactly. I love that book. I adore that book. I'm happy it ended the way it ended. I'm glad we all got to read it together.
Hell yeah. My favorite one was Last Night on Earth.
Yeah, no, right? That's easier for you, right?
I didn't read it long or anything, but like Kingdom Come.
What a book, right?
Awesome.
Yeah, and it turned out, of course, when I did that, I was like, that was a bad pick. Because I was like, recommend it. And like everybody's like, I don't understand who half these characters are. I'm like, I get it. Yeah, that makes sense. Other people chimed in on the thread, though. Frank S., who's never written into the show before, said, for me, it was probably issue 20, The Immortal Hulk. Mainly because I've never cared about the Hulk at all, but this book made me a fan. Also, just like Katie, without this show, I would never have read Invincible. My favorite superhero story of all time, parentheses, My Hero Academia, is on its heels, though.
You gotta keep fucking watching it, man. I know.
Hey, now hold on. I'm watching Clone Wars. Is that not good enough for you? Huh?
I'm trying to like decide of like what is more important to me, Clone Wars or My Hero Academia, and my body is just gonna split.
Yeah, you're gonna die. Down in the middle. This is how we get Barrett red and Barrett blue. Yep. Arvel says, I think during the entire run of the show, Tom King's Vision, The Boys, Kingdom Come, and Paper Girls were among my favorite comics. The one that still haunts me is still Uzumaki, fucking spirals. It was terrifying. I still think when I see spirals now, I think of that, and that's not something good to think about. And the fucking snail kids. Katie writes in and says, happy birthday, Barrett.
Thank you.
He stuck that one by me.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So I saw the kind of funny account tweet about it yesterday. I'm like, it was Barrett's birthday on Monday.
Because like I don't really talk about my birthday, and it was funny. Like yesterday, it was like the end of the day yesterday. I don't know how Cool Greg found out, but like Cool Greg like pops up behind his monitor and it's like, yo, was it your birthday yesterday? And I was like, oh yeah. It was like, oh shit, happy birthday. And it was like one by one of everybody else who was in the office like overheard that conversation over and over again. So like 5 times in a row, I was like, it was your birthday yesterday? Yeah. Oh, fuck, happy birthday. And then Andy just like tweeted out right after that of like, hey, it was Barrett's birthday yesterday. And my favorite response to that tweet was, this has big Kevin, you have 2 cars energy.
Katie continues. Greg, how does it feel to break my heart? But more seriously, thank you for the comic book club for the last 2 years, and I can't wait to see where Gregway goes next. Parentheses. And while I personally loved how things were, I can see how it's a sensible change overall. The question, if you had to rank your top 10 comic runs of all time, which would you choose? Define what you want to. Could be your favorite, could be what you're mad, etc. That's a ridiculous statement. Katie, I want you to know that's a ridiculous statement. I would put JLA, the beginning of Grant Morrison's JLA run on there. Especially Tower of Babel and then Prometheus when that happened. I think again Tom King stuff of Batman falling in love with Catwoman, getting engaged with Catwoman up until their marriage, and a little bit afterwards. You know what I mean? Like I talked about it a million times on this show, the whole first date or the double date with Superman and Lois, and that's fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Death and Return of Superman probably. Which is a gigantic run, but I would put it out there. Todd McFarlane's opening on Spider-Man, when it was him versus the Lizard and stuff, that was like definitive shit for me. Mm-hmm. Can you put all of Bendis' Spider-Man out there too? Like, is that something you want to do?
I can't put all of I can't do full runs because I don't know if I love enough runs to like really do it like a top 10. But like I can definitely think of like arcs, like. I think Court of Owls is probably my favorite, or like stories, not arcs, but like stories. So like Court of Owls is one of my favorite stories. Watchmen is definitely up there.
Great stuff.
like out of Bendis, like I think Ultimate Spider-Man is probably my favorite comic book run overall. Out of that run though, like I really love the Hollywood run where they're making a Spider-Man movie in that universe, and it is like they reference Raimi and Maguire and shit like that. But it was like a follow-up to the story with Doc Ock. And it was funny because like the villain that they had in their movie was Mysterio, because Mysterio is kind of like a joke in that universe. So I really like that story, and even though it was weird, I did really love the Venom and Carnage arcs before they brought him back for like the Clone Saga, which was always bad.
Why do they keep doing it? It's never good.
Shit. Like Hush is definitely.
Oh my god,
Hush is like
pick.
fucking fantastic. And then I don't even know if I can pick a fifth one for a top 5, but yeah, I'm a Spider-Man. I'm a Spider-Man Batman like fanboy.
Kyle Rayner's debut is Green Lantern. You know what I mean? After Hal goes crazy, including probably starting with Hal going crazy and becoming Parallax. Ignore their retconning of that.
Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Good pick.
Or like that entire series. I always reference the movie title, but it's a bunch of different things.
Well, I mean, while it's definitely looking back with rose-colored glasses of a different age, and I haven't read it in years. I enjoyed the first Civil War a lot. I will never forget being in my old friend. I don't talk to him anymore just because we fell out when I moved.
Is that Mark Miller?
Yeah. Okay. No, all right. But like in Bowen's old comic shop in Columbia, Missouri, reading it, and like when I turned that page and Spider-Man revealed his identity, it was like, what the fuck? I don't know. I don't know how the internet was so different that wasn't ruined for me.
I know. Civil War would actually probably be above Scott Pilgrim. So yeah, Civil War would probably be because there are those moments of like you don't need to like really like do all the tie-in to like run up to like,
I didn't
that moment, but like you still understand the weight of Peter Parker revealing who he is.
Yeah,
like you still understand the weight of like all of these moments of who's like kind of kickstarts that whole thing, the New Warriors, and like that whole event, and then like seeing
Blitzball, fastball, something like that,
Speedball, like turns into Penance, and like or that might be from a tie-in comic, but like still like all of these moments that it even like still crossed over into the movie itself, right? Or the movie like only took a little bit of parts, but like they still had the moment of like Tony having like this kind of acquaintanceship with this mother who got like fucked over by this like disaster that happened, and him just trying to do that woman right and stuff like that. You have that thread that I think was super powerful. Like all of that stuff was so fucking cool. The letter Reed Richards leaves.
Sue leaves Reed.
Oh, Sue leaves
that.
Reed.
That is
that
one of my
letter
moments,
is
right?
like the. I think that is the highlight of that entire comic.
You stole words out of my mouth because I was definitely gonna bring that up because it is such a perfect, heartbreaking letter where she clearly loves him, and like I wanted to give you one final great day, and she lists all the things she did and why she did them. Right?
God, it's like I'm not even like the biggest Fantastic Four fan, but just like knowing their relationship and like how that like it's literally a Civil War, it's breaking families apart and shit like that. Yeah. It was like that was a tough segment to read. So absolutely, Civil War is fucking rad.
It is, ladies and gentlemen. Doing the comic book club has been rad for us, for you. What? It's been a pleasure to serve you is basically what I'm saying. Thank you so much for supporting the comic book club. Of course, as you know, it's kind of funny. Nothing's ever dead. It just moves off into seasonal, irregular, whatever programming. Maybe it'll be back one day. Maybe in 2021 we'll be sitting here, Kind of Funny 5.0, talking about we have a weekly comic show or whatever.
In the new studio.
Oh, yeah, good point too. Yeah, we hire more people. There'll be more time for that kind of crap. Again, like I said, Greg Way is still there for you. Again, that is your Patreon exclusive show now. You get to ask me questions. I get to answer them. I'll talk about comics. I'll talk about games. I'll do whatever. It doesn't even have to be... You don't even have to ask questions. Like, you know what I mean? It is just me talking, vlogging. So I will gladly vlog about the comics I'm reading if that's what it is. Like I said, be vocal about this if you want it back. We can always try to figure that out down the line and stuff. But it's been an awesome time doing this. You know what I mean? It started as a morning show segment that was fun, but not well received necessarily. The people who loved it. The people who didn't care about comics were like, what the fuck? So putting it here was great. And, for a Patreon exclusive show, it always had a great following. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, Barrett, for being on the fun.
Thank you for having me.
Running it so many times as well.
Yeah. That I was gonna bring it back to the Hulk issue that you guys read because I ran that episode. I haven't read it yet, but I want to because the way you guys were describing some shit, I was like, ooh dear, ooh my.
Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, Excelsior.